I was home alone one night back in 2009. My parents were out on their weekly date nights, one of those had one too many at dinner and passed out in the movie theater kind of dates. Anyways, I had just returned from my afternoon jog. Being a hot August day, I had worked up quite a sweat on my run, so I had decided to take a cold shower and clean up a bit. My house doesn't have air conditioning and was quite stuffed up, so I decided to open a few windows to circulate the airflow within the house. I can remember opening a window in the kitchen, 2 windows across from each other in the living room, and 1 window in the basement. I knew I was going to be spending my evening down there watching movies, since it was much cooler. I had my shower, got dressed, and went downstairs to make myself some dinner. I took my dinner down to the basement and flicked on Netflix to start my binge-filled night of new shows. I do not recall falling asleep, but I must have passed out not long after eating my food and lying down. When I woke up, it was dark outside. The only light being cast into the basement was from the dimly lit TV screen. It was now freezing in the basement. I could feel a cold breeze circulating the room from having the window open for too long. I got up and walked over to the light switch that was located at the bottom of the stairs. I closed the window, then went back to turn off the TV, grab my dishes, and head upstairs. When I got upstairs, all the lights were off, indicating that my parents were still not home from their date. I cleaned the dishes, put them in the dishwasher, and closed the window above the sink. Just before I went up to go to my room for the night, I remembered that the windows in the living room were still open. I walked over to close the one window by the TV, then over to the next, which was located by the front porch. I noticed that my mom's vase with fake flowers was knocked off the table in front of the window, and the flowers were sprawled out across the floor. I didn't think much of it at the time. Maybe there was a strong breeze, and the curtains had tipped it over. I closed the window and started picking up the flowers. As I was cleaning, I heard a faint squeaky sound. What I could only imagine was a door handle being twisted. I listened as hard as possible. Following the squeak of the handle was a creak in the hallway floor upstairs. A pain shot from my stomach to my chest, and I froze. What seemed like an eternity of being bent over with my one hand holding the vase and the other clutching the flowers, I slowly stood up. I looked out the front window to check the driveway for my parents' car, hoping it was one of them upstairs. The driveway was empty. My heart sank. I quickly, but quietly, put the vase and flowers down on the table and silently began walking over to the bottom of the stairs to look up. As I got closer to the stairs, I heard 2 more creaks on the floor, which caused me to stop dead in my tracks. I waited, listening. Nothing. I was now only a few steps from the stairs. I took those last few steps and put one hand on the railing. I peeked around the corner and only saw darkness. I didn't know what to do. Do I flick on the lights and let the potential intruder in my house know that I'm coming upstairs? Do I leave and go to a friend's house? Do I call my parents? Do I grow a pair and just go upstairs? I decided to turn my phone on silent and go to the kitchen to text my dad, making sure I was close to the back door for an easy getaway. He said, "It's an old house. It's just settling after a really hot day." I told him about the sound of the door handle twisting. He just assumed there was an open window upstairs and the wind was knocking a door against the frame. Was that it? Could it just be a window that was left open? I felt a huge chunk of my anxiety start to fade after talking with my dad. So I decided to grab a glass of water and head on up to the bed. I flicked on the lights for the stairs and started making my way up, but slowly, a tiny knot in my stomach from before. I got to the top of the stairs and noticed that all of the doors were wide open, except for mine. My parents' old room and spare bedroom were on the left, and the den and my room were on the right, with the bathroom at the end of the hallway. Though, as my dad had predicted, my door was cracked just enough that a breeze could be making it hit the frame. It being as hot as it is today, it wasn't unusual for my mom to open all the doors and windows upstairs. I exhaled a sigh of relief. Now, fully confident that my dad was right, I turned on the lights to my room, did a quick look around, and walked over to my nightstand to put my water beside my laptop, then went off to the bathroom to get ready for bed. As I lay in bed trying to get sleepy, I was watching my favorite reruns of Seinfeld on my laptop. Then, out of nowhere, I heard a sound of something slowly scraping my closet door. I quickly flicked on the light beside my bed. My closet door was cracked open, ever so slightly. Questions started racing through my head. Was it open the whole time? Was it closed when I came in? I was positive that it was closed when I came in. Before I even had time to rationalize my thoughts, I heard the most disturbing, creepy, quiet, sinister laugh that I've ever heard in my life. No horror movie could ever replicate the sound I just heard. As soon as I slid the laptop off my legs, the closet door burst open, and someone was standing in the closet. My clothes were partially covering their body and face. I looked closer, and there was the most sickly, palest, dirtiest woman I've ever seen. For the split second that I saw her in horror, the image was burned into my brain forever. She had no shoes on her disgusting, dirt-stained feet. Her skin was sickeningly white with cuts and dried blood from her face, down her arms, all the way to her legs. She was wearing what I assume used to be a white nightgown, but it was now a discolored mess of dirt, blood, and who knows what else. Her gray, blue-veined, sunken-in face closely resembled a decaying skeleton. The rest of her face was hidden by my clothes. She asked in a quiet, grumbling, raspy voice, "Have you seen my baby?" That was enough for me to grab my phone and run. As soon as I was halfway out my bedroom door, I heard her shriek, "Give me back my baby!" and clothes hangers thrashing around behind me. I ran as fast as I could to the upstairs bedroom and locked the door. It was only a second later that I heard a huge crash against the door, along with the woman screaming in a devilish tone, demanding that I return her baby to her. I called 911, and the operator assured me the police would be there as fast as they could. I jammed my feet against the door and held my back against the sink. trying my hardest to make sure the door stayed closed. The woman would not let up, though. Her shrieks turned into low, demon-like grunts, and her banging on the door turned into heavy, bodily blows. With what seemed like an eternity, I heard a heavenly sound. I heard the police call out that they were entering the residence. I yelled at the top of my lungs that I was upstairs. All I could hear next was a mixed commotion of the officers yelling and the woman growling. The officers ended up pepper spraying the woman, and it took 3 of them to be able to force her to the ground. She was yelling in a possessed-like state the entire time. I did not come out of the bathroom until the cops assured me she was out of the house. The cops told me she was likely on drugs, or an escaped mental patient from the next county over. I tried telling them that she sounded like she was possessed or something, but they chalked it up to the woman just needing her medication. My parents arrived home shortly after I gave my statements to the police. We moved out of that house a month later. That was one night I was home alone that sadly I will never forget. The house gets weird when it's just me and him. There's a family emergency, so my mom is staying in the hospital and my grandmother is visiting her. We take turns taking care of him. He has dementia. My old man is not much company other than the rare lucid moment where we can have a normal conversation. Otherwise, he just babbles on and on about nothing in particular. He also wanders aimlessly throughout the house, humming tunelessly to himself. Of course, we have a dog, a 9-year-old lab mix, but he spends most days sleeping. It's often so quiet here that even the sound of a pin drop could sound like a gunshot. So when I hear moving around or someone talking, it's enough to make me stop what I'm doing and listen. Pop tends not to move around a lot since he's preoccupied solving puzzles on his laptop in his room upstairs. That, and we live next to a busy street near a large college, so there can be a lot of noise outside, depending on the time of day. However, 5 times out of 10, when I do hear him move, I can hear someone else move around in another part of the house, or following along right behind him, dragging feet, or the thudding of heavy boots, the light brushing of soft slippers. Sometimes it's the soft padding of a child's bare feet. Like I said, I've never been bothered much by it. I'd like to think of myself as a logical person. Everything has an explanation. I've always written it off as outside noises. But I've never been alone with my old man late at night. It's nighttime when I am writing this. It's 12:15. Shortly before this, I was playing Rust in the living room, and my grandmother hasn't come home from the hospital yet. I paused my game to listen. The sounds of bumping and dragging can be heard upstairs, but only when I'm busy playing my game, so it's hard to figure out if it's just a game or something else. The urgent need to check on Grandpa hits my conscience like a truck running over a pothole on the highway. What if he got up and fell? What if all that moving around was him trying to get up? All these horrible thoughts raced through my mind while I hurried upstairs. I swear the floorboards creaked and cracked loudly under each hurried step. The bedroom door to his bedroom was cracked open, and I could have sworn I shut it. He should be asleep, but I can hear movement inside. I stop at the 2 top steps when I hear a woman's sigh. Nana wasn't home yet. I opened the door slowly, and the nearby bathroom light shines in, illuminating the dark room with warm light. I glance from the dresser at the far end of the room and see my reflection in the mirror that sat on it. Craning my neck through the crack, I look right to the bed and I see his dark shape laying there. I wait until I see his chest rise and fall. He was fast asleep. What if he fell and got up? "Hey," I hissed at a low whisper. Nothing. Did I just hear the wooden floorboards creak at the far end of the room? I look, but there's nothing there. Chuckling at myself for being so stupid, I closed the door. But as I did, something happens that sets all the hairs on my neck stand on end. "Please, help me." A little girl's voice called from the darkness in the far end of the room. Damn me. There was no one there. So why is it I heard a little girl? I didn't open the door to check. Instead, I rushed downstairs and fixed myself a pot of coffee and grabbed smoke. I'm in my garage now, drinking my third cup of coffee. It's nearly midnight, and I can't sleep. I longed for the nights where my mother would don an evening gown, punctuate every sentence of her lecture with the clicks and clacks of her high heels as she strutted to the door, and leave a deep red imprint of her lips on my forehead before she allowed herself to be whisked away by her suitor of the night. Those nights are rare when your single mother works 12-hour shifts at the local nursing facility and comes back home to a long evening of drinking, loud television, and heated arguments with her children. This night was better than all the others because the universe had aligned the plans of everyone in the household to coincide, leaving me behind for at least 5 hours worth of quiet, alone time, something I rarely got. I was in my bedroom, my secret stash of snacks scattered all over my bed, and the one shared laptop we had in the house all to myself. I didn't know what I wanted to do first. Watch a movie, sing along to karaoke songs on YouTube, have a one-woman dance party. I settled upon watching a scary movie and turned off all the lights to set the mood. I was barely past the 30-minute mark when I heard the distant sound of snickering. For a few seconds, I convinced myself that it was just a background noise in the movie I was watching, but my reassurance faltered when I paused the film and still heard it. I was frozen in place. I didn't know what to do. I just waited for something to happen, but nothing did. I slowly shifted my position. The bed frame creaked under my weight as I did so. I planted both my feet on the ground and paused for a few minutes. It was most probably one of my siblings who had come home early and was playing a prank on me. It could have even been one of my neighbor's kids. Whoever it was, I was a 16-year-old girl who wasn't taking any chances. I finally had the mind to scan the room for anything I could use to defend myself. I shared a room with the 6 and 8-year-old girls. The entire place was childproof, and my best bet was a heavy sports trophy, but I figured that it was better than nothing. The snickering got louder and nearer. It was turning into chuckles. I didn't know whether I wanted to wait in here until I was found, or do the finding myself. I took another long, hard look at the trophy in my hands, and decided to wait. With each minute that passed, the laughter increased in volume and enthusiasm. It sounded like a child who knew his parents were heading towards his hiding spot during a game of hide and seek, laughing with the voice of an adult. Then I heard the sounds of chairs being dragged across the hardwood floor. It didn't sound like it was with much purpose other than to clear them out of the way. A slippery, slobbery, wet noise followed suit. It sounded familiar, yet it wasn't one I had particularly heard before. Whoever was in my kitchen was slamming, ripping apart and mushing whatever it was he had in his hands. I heard squishes and squelches, and I could only assume that it was some sick psychopath with a fetish for breaking into houses and mauling large animals. Whatever it was, he was laughing throughout. I was terrified. There was a stranger in my kitchen, laughing manically as he seemingly prepared himself a snack on the counter. There was an intruder in the downstairs of my house, the place where I had left my cell phone. I turned around and looked at my laptop, wondering if the police would respond to emails. I decided to give it a try anyways and tiptoed back to my bed. My trembling fingers struggled to type slowly and quietly, but I eventually managed to send an email and post for help on social media. An excruciating 7 minutes passed by until I heard someone pull up on the driveway. It didn't sound like the police. I heard the sound of heavy footsteps running up to the front door, frantically jamming a key into the keyhole and swinging the door open. The laughter stopped for a brief second before it turned into a roaring guffaw. A shriek, an ear-piercing scream penetrated the silence of the neighborhood, and whoever produced it turned around and ran towards the street, taking their screams with them. The manic laughter followed suit, and finally, I dared to run to the bedroom window. I saw my sister running down the street while screaming, trying to attract as much attention as she could, and by the looks of it, she was succeeding. Running in the opposite direction was a naked man covered in a massive amount of blood I had only seen before on television. He was still roaring with laughter as he disappeared out of sight. I watched out the window as a posse gathered just outside my house. My sister hadn't stopped screaming. I realized that she wasn't just trying to attract attention, but she was actually hysterical, and I did not want to go downstairs and greet whatever had brought my sister to such a state. The crowd grew larger as a flashing red and blue lights arrived and footsteps stormed into my house. I heard curses and wretches downstairs before someone finally called out. All I could manage to produce at first was a squeak. A female officer appeared in my doorway and asked me if I was all right. She told me to follow her with my eyes closed. Great advice for a rebellious teenager. I noticed her grasp become tighter as we reached the bottom of the stairs, and I couldn't help treating myself to a peek. Through squinted eyes, I saw the dismembered body parts of my mother, neatly arranged beside her decapitated head on the kitchen counter. I passed out. 47 minutes. That's how long I had spent listening to my mother being torn into, ripped apart, mutilated, and eaten. The person responsible for that ran straight to his nursing facility, straight to his bedroom, and straight into bed. He laughed as they restrained him to his bed. He laughed as he was taken away in cuffs. He laughed as he was locked up in a cell. He laughed as he made eye contact with me in the courtroom as his sentence was being announced. I won't be surprised if he was still laughing when they strapped him to the chair. He will never laugh again. Nor will my mother. By the time I'd finished middle school, my parents trusted me to be alone in the house by myself for long periods of time. We're talking days at a time. They did this so someone could care for our elderly dog who needed attention and supervision 24/7. With this, my parents would sometimes go out of state on a small vacation for the weekend, leaving me in the house by myself. Back to the present. It was a chilly fall evening. My parents had left early Friday morning and wouldn't be back until Sunday night. Everything had gone smoothly and I was having a good time, finally getting the house to myself. Until Saturday. When my parents left, I brought my gaming console out into the living room, along with some pillows and a blanket. Figuring my dog slept in the living room, I'd sleep out there with her in case she needed me in the middle of the night. It was getting to be around dinner time. After I fed my dog, I texted my mom, asking for a bit of money to order a pizza because I didn't feel like cooking that night. I ordered the pizza and sat on the couch, playing a shooting game until the time had passed and I heard the doorbell ring. I got up and quickly threw on my jacket and went to look through the peephole. There stood the pizza guy, a medium-height, middle-aged looking guy. He had dirty blonde hair and eye bags, seeming like he hadn't slept in a year. I could smell the dirty stench of cigarettes through my door. He had his eyes fixed on the camera doorbell, with a worried look on his face. I unlocked the door and opened it with the equivalent to my body width and greeted him with a smile. His eyes darted over to me. A small, creepy grin grew on his face. "Oh, I wasn't expecting a young girl like you," he said. Gross, I thought, confused on how to answer. I replied in a quiet giggle. I held out my hands to take my food. "So, how old are you?" the man asked, still grinning. "Sorry, man, I don't answer questions like that," I said, even more creeped out than before. He huffed, seeming to get frustrated. I placed the pizza boxes down on the couch next to me and reached into my pocket to hand him the tip I had planned to give him. "Are your parents home?" he asked. Lying, I replied, "Yeah, they're in the other room." I hoped he would believe me and just go, seeing as my parents took my mom's car on vacation, leaving my dad's car in the driveway. He scoffed and said, "You know, I like that game too. Do you like shooters?" referring to my paused game screen on the TV behind me. I became increasingly annoyed, but I didn't want to be rude and just slammed the door in his face. "Yeah, sure, look, I'm sorry, but I have to go now," I said, trying everything I could to get this man to leave me the hell alone. The man scowled. He took the tip and crumpled it in his hands and started muttering profanities under his breath. But I could only make out one phrase before I shut the door. "You're gonna regret this." I locked the door and anxiously watched carefully from the window to make sure he got back in his car. I didn't stop watching until he sped off around the corner. I let out a sigh of relief and did a quick sweep around the house and made sure all the windows and doors were locked. A couple of hours had passed until I decided I was going to lay down and watch TV for the night until I fell asleep. I made sure my dog was tended to and laid down. Before I noticed, I had drifted off, completely forgetting the interaction I had earlier in the day. When I woke up, it was still dark outside. 2 in the morning-ish. My dog was barking like crazy, and not a "I want to go outside" bark, an alarmed "I see a stranger" kind of bark. If you have a dog, you understand this and you know what they're indicating to you. I propped myself up on my elbows and stretched for a second, looking around for a bit, and didn't see anything. I was about to lay back down until I noticed it in the corner of my eye. A face. In the window to my right, I saw the same man from earlier, grinning again. He waved at me, still smiling, but looking more sinister by the second. I felt my blood run cold. Why is he here? How long had he been watching me sleep? I shot up, my fight or flight triggered instantly. I ran to my room and pulled the baseball bat out from underneath my bed and walked back to the living room where I had been sleeping, clutching it in hand. When I went back, the man had moved from the window to the front door, knocking gently. "Let's hang out and have some fun," I heard him say from outside. "I'm gonna call the police if you don't get the hell away from my house," I yelled back. He banged on the door, violently aggressive this time. "The hell with you, you little brat," he screamed. The doorknob shook violently. My dog was going mad at this point, so I took her with me and locked myself in my room and dialed 911 on my phone. I was explaining what happened when I heard a couple loud bangs. He was throwing himself at my front door to try and bust through it. I had texted my parents and they had already packed and started driving back. But all that left my mind when I heard the front door burst open and fall onto the ground of my living room. I whispered into my phone to the 911 operator that the man had broken into my house, and the person on the other end of the line instructed me to stay quiet and sit tight as the police were minutes away. Before I could think of anything, my phone died, and I started panicking. I quietly went over and shut my bedroom lights off and hid in the closet with my dog, petting her as to make sure she wouldn't bark and reveal our hiding spot. I heard the man walking through my house, searching under tables, behind couches, and in hallway closets. He stopped walking for a moment. I could hear him directly outside my bedroom door. He shook the handle and huffed that same way before, indicating he was becoming frustrated. There was a couple bangs on the door before he was able to punch a hole through my door, but enough to fit his hand through to unlock it. I heard the lock. It gave a small click sound before the door creaked open. It was pitch black in my room. The man took a step in and stood there. Seconds felt like hours. I cupped my hand over my mouth to quiet my anxious breathing. I heard him rummaging through my belongings. He looked under the bed, under my desk, then the last to hide. He had his hand on the closet door. I'm dead, I thought. I didn't know who he was or what he wanted, but I knew it wasn't going to be good. Before he had the chance to open the closet, my prayers were answered, and I heard the sound of sirens, of police getting closer and closer. "Damn it," the man whispered. He exited my bedroom and ran through my home. I heard the back door slide open and the crunching footsteps through the dead grass. The 911 operator must have told the police where I was, and I felt like I could finally breathe again when an officer opened the closet door and told me it was okay to come out. They led me outside with my dog and leash, and I sat on the edge of the seat in the police car. I waited there as the police searched my house in case the man had still been there. The police said there were no signs anything was stolen. He wasn't there for valuables. He was looking for me. The fact will disturb me till the day I die. There were many signs that it had been a break-in, so the case stayed open for a while, but eventually closed. The guy was never found, and it wasn't known where he was. His identity was found, and this man had past warrants for home invasions and failure to appear in court. The fact that he was never caught and is still out there, somewhere, shakes me to my core. But I know for sure I'm never, ever opening the door for anybody ever again when I'm home alone.